Allow me to pose a rather unusual challenge. How would you go about making an entire nation poor and then rich again without breaking any rules? It can be done. Here's what you do. First, you add more rules, and then you take them away. I'll explain. We're gathered here today in beautiful Jersey, but if you turn in this direction and head 19,050 kilometers that way, you'll come to another island nation, New Zealand. And last century, New Zealand taught the world a lesson about the rules versus freedom. In the mid-1950s, New Zealand ranked in the top 3 for highest living standards. But by the 1980s, their economy was faltering, falling behind. They were, in fact, the poorest of the world's developed nations. So why? Well, economists pointed to the simple lack of freedom. Over those decades, they piled on law after law, rule after rule, more and more regulation until they cryogenically froze the talent of their people. Organizations couldn't operate. Individuals couldn't innovate. Then, in the 1980s, something changed. A new government took a hatchet to the rules. They scrapped them, cleared them away, repealed, reformed, and overnight, the whole thing began to transform. They went from the most regulated economy in the OECD to the freest. One journalist had described them as the most unfree economy that wasn't actually communist in name. Just about overnight, they went right back up to the point where they were in the top 3 for highest living standards once again. And the explanation for this economic miracle is simple. Up to a point, rules help. But add too many, and they begin to strangle. Folks, welcome to one of the most important discussions nobody is having. A quiet tussle, a behind-the-scenes war, the rules versus freedom. This is something we need to talk about a great deal more. I'm the author of a rather unusual book. It's called They're Your Rules, Break Them. And I help leaders to intelligently dismantle excess rules. And just for the fun of it, I'm married to someone who works in regulation. So what's the problem with rules? Well, for starters, not all rules are bad. A rule is like a tool. Some are more useful, some less so. Some just sit around for ages, never getting swept away and not doing terribly much good. But some are actively harmful. And here's the important part. The culture that we create in your business, on this island, anywhere, depends on understanding the difference. And that's what we're going to try to look at today. So, the way in which we conceive of rules changes the culture around us. Now, does that mean we should go about scrapping all rules? Are we looking at anarchy here? No, nobody wants a lawless nation. So what do? We add rules for the sake of law and order and good governance. And then we add some more. And then we add some more. Now, answer this. Do you think it gets infinitely better with the more rules we add? And if not, why not? What is the limiting principle? Well, what do we begin to sacrifice when we add too many rules? Folks, the first casualty is trust. In a high-trust culture, you don't need terribly many rules. Good people with good values who are like-minded and buy into the thing that they all know needs to be done operate together, knowing the limits, knowing how to do it, and they get things done. And because they're not overly stifled by rules, they're able to innovate. They're able to find lateral and unusual ways of getting things done. That's a healthy society. That's a productive society. But when fear and mistrust reign, everything changes. That's when we start to overly regulate, to micromanage, to react to people with fear. Governments who don't trust their own people. And it's even stranger in a corporate context where we've chosen the people. And the result of that is that innovation and the possibility of getting things done gets crushed. That's the first casualty of war, but there are actually many more. I've started counting the costs of rules, and I'll give you just a few off the top of my head. The first one is monetary. You pay people to police people. Then you pay people to police the people who police the people. And so on. And instead of your money going into growth, you're pouring your resources into preventing activity. That's cost number one. Cost number two comes in terms of time and opportunity lost. When Google saw Facebook rising up on the horizon, they decided to compete to design a competing product. And their engineers poured their hearts and souls into it, and they believed they had a winner. And they were just about to launch it when the compliance people stepped in and said, just give us 2 more years, and then you're free to go. Opportunity lost. And the third, and perhaps most serious cost, is in terms of natural attrition. When you have too many laws saying no, your go-getters go and get somewhere else. You lose all the radical talent that you'd gathered around you. It happens in organizations, it can happen in your team, it can happen to this island if we're not aware of this. So what do we do to keep that radical value? That's what we're after. Well, folks, there are interesting ways of looking at how we interact with rules. We need a few, we don't need all of them, we shouldn't pile them on indefinitely. How do we go about conceiving of this entire thing? Well, the way that we used to work has become really quite outdated. It used to go like this. You would take a group of people and separate them into different departments. You've got planning over here, you've got compliance over there, production over there, and they're all blind to one another. They operate in their silos. Now, over time, they start cooking up their own norms and rules, and eventually those rules start working against one another. You have a house divided. Happens in companies, happens in governments. You have one government department that's focused on productivity and growth, and another government department that's focused on shutting down that exact same growth. Folks, I met a farmer a while ago, and he's receiving visits from 2 different government departments. One is paying him to implement a new idea, and the other is fining him for the exact same idea. And they never talk to one another. The new way of working is different. You don't do that. What you do is you connect all forms of intelligence and get them working together from the start. Connected thinking, pooled intelligence, open debate across these departments. You have all your best people and all their talent swirling around the problem from day one. All right, so how do you organize that? Well, you've got to start by making sure that everyone understands the main thing. What are you actually trying to achieve? That is the main thing, and you organize people around that. It sounds obvious, don't we already do that? Well, a Forbes study found that more than half of British employees do not know their company's mission statement. A Harvard Business Review study found that on average, more than 95% of employees don't know the company's strategy. So no, we don't do that. You start by making sure that everyone knows the main thing. Once you have that in place, now it gets exciting. Now you can start hunting for bad rules to scrap. How do you go about that? Well, your first step is a very easy one. Ask yourself, which rules are people already trying to break? As you sit here today, what silly rule would you ditch if you could? If you could have it scrapped right now in order to do something useful faster, which one would you pick? People choose the path of least resistance, and that's smart. So think of it this way. Imagine you're an architect and you've built an office park. Now you need to lay pathways between the buildings. Where would you lay your pathways? All right, that's already gone wrong. What you should do instead is wait and just see where people walk naturally when they are free to do so. They'll take the path of least resistance. Eventually they wear grooves in the grass. That's where you lay your paths. Same applies for systems. We like to impose our system upon our talent. It should go the other way. Our talent know better default settings. How would they like to get it done? Are our rules, our procedures, our operating norms getting in the way? They're your rules. You can break them. Enable their talent. If we're being smart about this, we'll go one step further. Which rules are your customers trying to break? Are they trying to show you that you've put too much bureaucracy, too many procedures, too many rules between them and handing their money to you? They're your rules. Break them. Folks, there are so many smart ways we can go about doing this. I've collected over 50. In the time I have, I'll share some good ones with you. You can, for example, implement a policy that goes like this. No new rule without ditching 2 old ones. That gets you trending toward freedom. Or how about this one? You've seen this in the classroom and you've seen it at work. Don't punish everyone for the crime of one offender. Address the offender. Leave the rest free. You don't need new rules for them. How about this one? This is one of my favorites. Solve the right side of the problem, but don't ban the behavior. If something is dangerous, it has risk to it, by all means address the danger, solve the risk, but don't ban the behavior. As you do, people become less and less free. Your radical talent gets up and goes. We don't need that. You don't need new rules to manage it. There are hundreds of ways of creating and carving out more freedom. The important part, though, really, is your buy-in. You have to have the will to do this on purpose. Because, folks, freedom doesn't happen by default. Intelligent leaders have to dismantle excessive rules and carve out that freedom for their people. Why do we do it? Because we trust them. Because they have talent to share with us. And when we extend that trust to our talent and we give them that freedom, they reward us with prosperity. It worked in New Zealand. It can work for you. Freedom is oxygen to your system. They're your rules. You can break them.